And again, many of them are here and on the sign over there. But I'm telling you folks, the true patriarch of this miracle in Rwanda was Chaim Motzen. Chaim, please. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
That was fantastic.
I want to get a picture there.
Thank you very much, Yosef. Thank you guys for coming here. It's the largest group we've had since our launch, and it's great to have you all here. Let me give a little bit of an overview of the project, talk to you a little bit about why we chose Rwanda, and maybe talk about some of the success factors, challenges, and how that might relate with the work that you're all doing. In terms of the facts, Yosef mentioned this, others mentioned this. This is the first utility-scale solar field in East Africa. Not the first planned one, but the first built solar field in East Africa. It is the largest in Africa outside of South Africa and Mauritius, and it increased Rwanda's generation capacity by about 6%. Why did we choose Rwanda? When we were looking at projects, we started looking at this in 2012. Okay, so that's when we started looking at solar in this region. Looked at about 7-8 countries. And why I liked Rwanda, there's a number of factors. Number one, there's a tremendous need. So there's 110 megawatts of energy on the grid for about 12 million people. How many of you guys are engineers in the energy sector? A couple of you, Joe? Okay.
Former engineer.
Former engineer. Okay, so for those who are not, just to put this in context, 12 million people, 110 megawatts. Israel has how many people? About 8 million people, 13,000 megawatts. Clearly there's a need. Of that energy, 40% was diesel. So polluting and expensive. So there's a business case, it makes sense. We had a tremendous partner, and I'm looking at JC here, and I'm looking at our partners here in Rwanda. The utility was extremely serious, and now I'm looking at our partners from the utility. And there was a single-minded intensity and interest from the government to move quickly, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And the last thing I'll say in terms of the business environment is there's lack of corruption here, which makes you able to do business, clean business in a clean way. And that was very attractive. So we started moving. This is March 2012. I'll just give you a brief timeline. I'll get into some nitty-gritty here. March 2012, we started looking at the project. End of December 2012, we submitted a feasibility study, which was accepted by the end of January 2013. At that point, we were invited to start negotiating with the government on a utility-scale deal. We spent the next 5.5 months negotiating. In July 2013, we signed a power purchase agreement. The power purchase agreement means that the government agreed to take the energy that we produce for the next 25 years at an accepted rate. And at that point was what came the biggest challenge. And at that point, in July 2013, they gave us 6 months, later extended to 7, within which to reach financial close. Now, some of you are lawyers, I'm sure.
No, of course not.
6 months, 7 months, we had to raise $24 million, we had to close the deal financially, otherwise the deal was dead. If we didn't close financially the deal in 7 months, the deal was dead. At that point, nobody had done such a field. There are no IPPs, no independent power producers had been built in Rwanda. So it was harder to, it's not like this was cookie cutter, this had to be done from scratch. At that point, what happened is we had a few things that were very critical. We had, in terms of the actual deal that was signed, we had an excellent legal team, and I'll actually give credit to lawyers, Norton Rose, Fulbright, who were fantastic, and they had signed the only other actual deal, but the legal was actually really critical. And I point this out, it might be a little bit boring, but in terms of, it's actually super critical that the legal side on our side is done right, and the legal side on the other side is done right. And Rwanda had excellent counterparts, and if you have two good lawyers on both sides, you can have a good deal, and that was actually really critical. In July, right after we signed the deal, we applied for an ASIF grant from Power Africa. We received $400,000 from the Africa Clean Energy Finance Facility through OPIC, and that was really critical timing, because as a developer, the hardest time is the earliest stage, the riskiest stage when nobody wants to give you any money, and when you're, we really had no money, and it was really critical to have that cushion and to know that we're going to be okay if we can get everything else put together. It was a flexible grant, it was a speedy grant, not a lot of bureaucracy, and with no strings attached in terms of, forcing you to do things that might not be best for the project. So it was actually really important. The other thing which Power Africa helped us at the time, by the way, was they were also willing to give us political risk insurance, which we ended up not using because of our partners, who were fantastic. We got the Norwegian Government Development Fund to come in, and that was implied political risk insurance. We ended up not needing the political risk insurance, but OPEC was willing to do it, even though it was a very small percentage of the deal for them, but they were willing really to work very, very flexibly, which was really, really important and appreciated. We signed in July. February 14th, 2014, we reached financial close, less than 7 months. We had 17 bidders for EPC, for engineering, procurement, construction. We had to juggle during that period. We had 4 different debt players that we did due diligence with. And we had our equity partners that we had to find at that time. There was 1 week I was in 9 countries over 5 days. It was hectic. I didn't sleep for about 6-7 months, but I will say that our partners from Rwanda Energy Group and from the Rwanda government, who gave us this crazy deadline, also didn't sleep during that period. And it would not have been possible without the real laser focus of our partners in the Rwanda government. A couple of things in terms of success factors, which I think are relevant. Strong local partners. Government has to be there for this kind of thing to work. The technology is not complicated. I think what we did, which is, we're the first, and people are using us as a case study. OECD did a case study. There's a lot of case studies about this project, but it's not because the solar technology we're the first. We're actually using understood solar technology, and that solar technology is used all over the world. The hard part is one of the hard parts is how do you get it done in a context where there haven't been deals done before. So a lot of the nitty-gritty, the legal stuff, the taxes. We went to 4 different tax authorities here, the top 4, the big 4, I don't know if they're 5, 4, but we went to the KPMGs of the world. All of them gave us different advice, which contradicted each other. If we're wrong, the deal's not profitable and you don't have a deal. This is not sexy stuff, but we realized if we don't get this right, we don't have a deal. We had to read the tax code. I had my deputy read the entire Rwandan tax code, and I probably spent about 50 to 100 hours on Rwanda taxes. I think we're pretty expert on Rwanda taxes. Worked closely with the Rwanda Revenue Authority to get clarity on these ambiguous issues, and that was part of the key things. I say this partially because I know that Power Africa is involved not only in the helping of getting funding, which is critical, the ASIF grant that Yosef spoke about and some of the other grants, but there's also very important enabling environment. Like I said, the taxes. There's a book on power purchase agreements, which is probably the best book on power purchase agreements that was published. Again, this is pretty nitty-gritty stuff, but really, really important to get this done in a broad way and critical for this to work. The IPP frameworks have to exist. We now have an IPP framework here that we're the first to build. There's another couple that are getting on board right now, but having that framework will allow more projects to happen, and I know that this is something that's struggled with in many countries. And as I mentioned earlier, the grants, especially at the early stage, are really important. I'll conclude with one last comment just about Rwanda, and I want to say thank you to our partners. Before I talk about Rwanda, I want to say thank you to our partners. The last thing I want to say about our partners is, to do a deal like this, it's not just one party. There's many, many parties that have to work together, and they have to trust each other. We had debt from the FMO, Dutch Development Bank, and Emerging Africa Infrastructure Fund. They're the only ones who had done a prior deal. It hadn't been built yet, but they understood Rwanda and were willing to come in quickly, and that was part of why we were able to go speedily. The Norwegian Government Development Fund, amazing partner. In terms of equity, we have Scatec Solar, who also engineered, procured, and constructed this field, and also operations and management. Twaha, you heard from. We had the KLP, the largest pension fund in Norway, and we had Norfund, the Norwegian Government Development Fund. Our partners, in terms of debt, we also got in terms of a grant, we also got a grant from EP, which is the Finnish, UK, and Austrian governments. All of that came and was really, really critical. But of course, it couldn't have been done without the cooperation and partnership with the Rwandan government. And I'll say one last thing, just so you can understand what kind of focus they had. From the time we started negotiating in February 2013 till we went to full production in September 2014, there were 3 ministers of infrastructure. You're the 3rd, I believe. 2 ministers of energy, 3 heads of the Rwandan Development Board, and 3 heads of the utility. And throughout that period, we were able to get this done. I don't know many places that would be the case. At any rate, welcome to the field. I know you're pressed for time. We're going to have a short tour.
We're a little pressed for time here. Though. I wanted to provide JC, since this is your land. I wanted to provide you just a brief moment to talk about the orphanage that this feeds into, and then we're going to take a picture right here.